There's a form of communication that most men never learn to read. It's not what she says. It's not even what she doesn't say. It's what her body accepts or refuses, in ways so subtle that most interactions go completely unnoticed. You've probably experienced this. The same woman reacts completely differently to touch depending on who initiates the contact. A casual gesture from you makes her pull back slightly. The exact same gesture from another man leaves her perfectly comfortable. Or the opposite. This isn't random. It's not luck. It's not some mysterious chemistry you either have or you don't. It's reading, understanding, knowing how to decode a language that the body speaks long before words ever enter the conversation. Touch is probably the most honest signal a woman can send. Because unlike words, which can be polite, diplomatic, or carefully chosen, the body doesn't lie. It reacts at an instinctive level, far below conscious awareness. When a woman allows a man to touch certain parts of her body, she's not simply giving physical permission. She's revealing where she places him psychologically. At what level of trust? At what degree of emotional proximity? And there's one zone in particular, a zone most men never even suspect, that functions as an absolute indicator. When she allows that contact, something fundamental has shifted in her perception of you. But to understand that zone, you first need to understand how the female trust system works through touch. Because it's not binary. It's not yes or no. It's a territory divided into progressive zones, each with its own level of significance. What I'm about to reveal might surprise you. Because the zone that reveals the deepest level of trust isn't what most men think it is. And when you learn to recognize it, you'll never misread a woman's interest again. But first, we need to understand something fundamental about how women process touch. Here's what you need to know. The female brain processes touch differently than the male brain. This isn't opinion, this is neurobiology. When you touch a woman, her brain doesn't just register physical contact. It instantly analyzes multiple layers of information: the intention behind the gesture, the level of threat or safety, the congruence between what you're saying and what your body is expressing. This analysis happens in milliseconds, long before she's had time to formulate a conscious thought about it. That's why a woman can pull her hand away without even knowing why, or conversely, let contact linger when she hadn't planned to. Her nervous system has already made the decision. Neuroscience research shows that women possess more developed tactile sensitivity than men. Their skin contains more sensory receptors. Their brain allocates more resources to processing tactile information, which means they pick up nuances you don't even perceive. When you touch her arm, she doesn't just feel your hand. She feels whether you're nervous or calm, whether you're seeking something or simply being present, whether you're testing a reaction or the gesture is natural. Everything passes through the quality of touch, and here's what changes everything. It's not just where you touch that matters, it's how you do it. Two men can touch exactly the same zone and trigger two radically different reactions. The first might trigger a slight withdrawal, an almost invisible tension. The second can create a spark, an opening, an invitation to go further. The difference doesn't come from physical appearance, it comes from the energy behind the gesture, from presence, from quiet confidence that doesn't try to force anything, but doesn't apologize for existing either. Women feel this difference at an instinctive level, and it's this perception that determines what they allow or don't allow. Think about it this way. Have you ever touched a woman's shoulder during conversation and felt her body stiffen slightly? Not pulling away completely, just a micro adjustment that tells you something isn't quite right? That's her nervous system communicating what her words won't say. Now, contrast that with touching a woman's shoulder and feeling her lean into it, even slightly. Her body relaxing, her attention focusing more on you. Same gesture, same location, Completely different response. What changed? Not the touch itself, the intention behind it, the calibration, the presence. Women are extraordinarily sensitive to this. They can feel when a touch is needy versus confident, when it's testing versus natural, when it comes from wanting something versus simply being present. And this sensitivity isn't conscious. She's not thinking about it. Her body is reading you at a level far below rational thought. This is why some men can touch a woman and create attraction, while other men touch the same woman in the same way and create discomfort. It's not about looks. It's not about status. It's about the energy transmitted through that contact. But now, let me show you something even more important: the hierarchy of touch zones. Because not all areas of the body carry the same psychological weight. The female body isn't a uniform space in terms of permission. It's divided into hierarchical zones, each corresponding to a different level of trust. Understanding this hierarchy means understanding where you stand in her perception, and more importantly, where you're not yet. Level 1. Arms and shoulders. This is neutral territory, the public zone. When a woman accepts you touching her arm or shoulder in conversation, she's simply telling you that you're not a threat. Don't confuse this with attraction. This is a minimum threshold, a starting point. She's observing how you handle this basic access before deciding if you deserve to go further. What matters here isn't so much that she accepts the contact, but how she responds to it. Does she maintain eye contact? Does she lean in slightly, or does she create subtle distance? These micro adjustments tell you everything. Most men make their first mistake right here. They touch a woman's arm during conversation, she doesn't pull away, and they interpret this as interest. But all she's signaling is that you haven't crossed into threatening territory, nothing more. The real signal is in what happens next. Does she reciprocate with touch? Does her body language open up? Or does she remain polite but closed? Level 2. Hands. Hands are already more personal. This is a space of expression, creation, connection. When she lets you hold her hand, even briefly, she's taking a first step toward vulnerability. Because hands communicate. They're active. By giving you her hand, she's temporarily handing over a certain control. She's testing whether you're worthy of it. Watch her reaction. If she interlaces her fingers with yours, if her hand remains relaxed, if she doesn't quickly withdraw it, she's comfortable with this proximity. If, on the contrary, her hand stays rigid, or she quickly finds a reason to pull it away, you're still in the evaluation phase. Here's something most men miss. How you hold her hand reveals everything about your confidence level. A man who holds too tight is compensating for insecurity. A man who holds too loose appears uninterested. The right grip is firm but relaxed, present but not possessive. And here's the key. If she interlaces her fingers with yours without you initiating it, that's a clear signal. She's not just accepting your touch, she's actively participating in the connection. Level 3. Waist and lower back. This is territorial space. You can't see who's touching you there, so it requires instinctive trust to accept this contact. When you place your hand on her lower back, you're entering her protective space. This is a gesture that, when well calibrated, communicates a form of masculine security. But poorly calibrated, it can seem possessive or intrusive. What matters here is her bodily response. If she leans slightly into your contact instead of away from it, if she remains relaxed, she's accepting your physical presence and your protective role. I've seen men completely misread this zone. They place their hand on a woman's lower back to guide her through a door, and they interpret her not pulling away as acceptance. But watch carefully. Is her body relaxed or tense? Is she leaning into you or subtly creating distance while appearing polite? The lower back is also interesting because it's one of the first zones where sexual undertones begin to appear. It's not overtly sexual like more intimate areas, but it's no longer purely friendly either. It exists in that middle space where attraction starts to become physical. Level 4, neck and face. You're entering sacred territory. The neck is biologically a zone of extreme vulnerability. In all species, exposing your neck to another individual is a sign of primitive trust. When she lets you touch her neck, brush her nape, caress her jawline, she's making an act of psychological surrender. She's telling you that you've moved from stranger to trusted person. The face is even more intimate. It's her identity. Touching a woman's face is touching what she presents to the world. It's personal. It's direct. It's impossible to rationalize. If she closes her eyes for a moment when you brush her face, if she leans her cheek slightly into your palm, you've bypassed all rational barriers. You're in pure emotional space. Here's what most men don't understand. You can't rush to this level. If you try to touch a woman's face before she's ready, before trust has been established, her body will react with discomfort, even if she's too polite to say anything. But when the moment is right, when trust has been built, touching her face becomes one of the most powerful forms of nonverbal communication available to you. It says, "I see you. I value you. I'm present with you," in a way that words never could. The ultimate level, hair. But there's one zone even more revealing, a zone few men truly understand. And this is where everything plays out. Hair. For women, hair isn't just an aesthetic element. It's an extension of their identity, of their femininity, of their control over their own image. Watch them. They touch their hair constantly. When they're nervous, when they're flirting, when they're thinking. It's a gesture of self-soothing, reaffirmation, connection to themselves. Hair is sovereign territory. When a woman lets a man touch her hair, run his hand through it, play with a strand, something fundamental happens in her subconscious. She's ceding control over something she normally commands alone. This isn't rational, it's visceral. But attention, and this is crucial, it's not the fact that she accepts the gesture that matters most. It's her reaction. If she closes her eyes for a moment, if she tilts her head slightly toward your hand, if she sighs almost imperceptibly, if an involuntary smile appears on her face, these aren't conscious responses. It's her nervous system entering a state of total safety. It's a chemical surrender, a response that comes from far deeper than logic or politeness. I've observed this hundreds of times. A woman can seem relatively composed, guarded even, but the moment a man she trusts touches her hair with the right energy, with presence rather than agenda, something shifts. Her whole demeanor softens. Her defenses lower. Her body language opens. This is the signal most men never learn to recognize, because they're too focused on what she's saying, on trying to impress her, on planning their next move. They miss the moment when her body tells them everything they need to know. But why is this signal so powerful? What makes hair so significant? You might wonder why hair in particular. The answer lies in evolutionary psychology and feminine symbolism. Hair has always been associated with femininity, sensuality, personal identity. In almost every culture, a woman's hair carries significance. It's cared for, protected, presented. When a woman changes her hairstyle, it's often a sign of internal change. When she feels beautiful, her hair reflects it. When she's stressed, she touches it compulsively. Hair is an emotional barometer. So when she allows a man to touch it, She's not just giving access to a part of her body, she's giving access to a part of her identity, to her vulnerability, to her psychological intimacy. This gesture can't be faked. It can't be polite. It can't be just friendly. When a woman lets a man touch her hair with tenderness and she responds positively to that touch, she's already crossed all the internal barriers that matter. This doesn't mean everything is won. This doesn't mean there's nothing left to build, but it means that psychologically, emotionally, she's placed you in a very specific category: men with whom she can let go. Think about what this means practically. In the early stages of dating, a woman might accept you touching her arm, her shoulder, maybe holding her hand. These are progressive steps, tests of compatibility and comfort. But when she lets you touch her hair, when she responds with that unconscious softening, that subtle lean into your hand, you've entered different territory entirely. You're no longer being evaluated, you're being accepted. I've seen relationships transform in that moment. The dynamic shifts from "we're getting to know each other" to "there's something real here." Not because of anything said, but because of what her body communicated. And here's what makes this so powerful. She often doesn't consciously realize she's doing it. The response is too deep, too instinctive, which means it's completely authentic. It can't be performed or faked. Compare this to verbal communication, where people can say what they think you want to hear or what social norms dictate. The body's response to touch, especially in these vulnerable zones, bypasses all of that. It's pure truth. Now let's be clear about something essential. This understanding isn't a manipulation manual. This isn't a technique to conquer a woman by strategically touching her hair. If you approach touch as a strategy, you've already lost. Because your intention will be perceived, and it will create exactly the opposite effect of what you're seeking. Touch works when it's the natural consequence of authentic connection, when it's not calculated but felt, when it comes from a place of presence, not need. What this map of zones gives you isn't an action plan. It's a reading tool, a way to understand where you truly are in the dynamic with a woman. If she easily accepts you touching her arm, but subtly withdraws her hand when you try to hold it, you know you're not yet in her deep trust zone. If she leans into your hand when you brush her face, you know something real has developed between you. And if she closes her eyes when you run your hand through her hair, you know the psychological barriers have fallen. These signals allow you to move forward with intelligence, not to force, not to hold back unnecessarily either. Because here's the mistake many men make. Either they move too fast, ignoring resistance signals, or they never advance, even when all doors are open. The truth lies between the two, in the ability to read what's really happening beyond words. You don't need techniques. You don't need strategies. You simply need presence, awareness, the capacity to read what's truly occurring beyond the surface. And when you master this reading, you never wonder where you stand again. You know, because her body has already told you.